Hey guys, welcome to Two Guys and Hockey Talk, Season 4, Episode 24. Wow. Woo! It's been a wild week in the NHL.
Yeah,
Pavel?
We got some noise in the background there, but yeah, you're tuning me out. But yeah, how you doing, Evan?
Oh, I'm doing good. You got noise from me?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know. I got nothing going on but the hockey game that plays on Two Guys and like that. So what was your week like, man?
That's all good. Evan, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing fabulous. Really excited. In just a minute, we're going to introduce our guest with us. It's been a busy time in the Twitter world for me this past week. All the trades, NHL stuff. We're going to give that to you guys at the second half of the show. In the first half of the show, we got a guest. We're going to talk a little bit. We talked to you about our local women's national university hockey team. So Pavel's going to give a little bit of an update and mention it to you. And yeah, we are going to talk about what's been happening. So you got some stuff I'm guessing that you want to talk about, Pawel the cat.
Oh, I do. And it's not about my cats. So why don't you grab a beverage and make
sure you guys tune
in and got it. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Cheers.
That you join us every Wednesdays at 7 p.m. on Mountain Standard Time. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. You can follow Evan at Revenev. You can follow me at hockey_2. YouTube, give us a follow there if you've missed an old episode. And give us a follow on Spotify. We're there. And I want to give out a special shout out to Sports Empire. They rock. They got all your sports covered, and they are amazing. Give it up for Key, Freddie, and that whole team. We love them. We appreciate them. Cheers to you guys. Evan,
cheers.
Take it away.
Well, before we go ahead and introduce our guests here in just a moment, I just want to say we got some really good guests lined up. We always have good guests, whether they're super fans, whether they're beat writers, players themselves, whether they're guys that run their podcast, they do their writing. There's always someone interesting. Even like, I love Glenn Ringdale and our meeting that we had with him and some of the insights, right? It's always a fabulous time to talk hockey. Right now, it's one of the most exciting seasons, but I want to let you guys know we've been talking about our website. We're going to get into this more next week. Our website, the deal has been set. We have a new sponsor. So we are moving in not only with the Sports Empire Network sponsoring, but JR Designs is going to be running our website and will become a new writer on our website. So if you are a writer of hockey, you want to get it on, as well as one of our guests that's on here tonight. Hey, Zill, how you doing? She has been bringing us information from all over. She is going to be going on and doing some live stuff from different places and giving you some different stuff. I'm trying to convince her to do some writing. She's done poetry. So I'm encouraging you, Zill. Poetry on hockey, man.
We need you to write she needs to write a haiku about hockey.
Plus, interesting stuff. We have Sports Plus on next week. We're going to introduce some equipment that is going to make sense when we tell you to keep your heads up. So you're going to want to join us. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead? We're going to bring in our guest here tonight. So Alec, he has hosted 5 for Fighting. It is a podcast that brings everything around the enforcers in hockey, the fighting that happens. There's some stuff that we've talked about in the past. Alec, we're glad to get you onto our show and talk more about this. Welcome, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys for taking the time to have me on. You know, some nobody hockey fan out in North Carolina. I appreciate it, man.
No, we love it. But you know what? You add to that mystery of know nothing with that microphone covering your face like Al.
Yeah,
from,
exactly.
Home Improvement, so you can just see the top of your eyes.
Heidi ho, neighbor.
Oh man, that's so great. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and get started with forget about all that stuff. So, Pavel, start us off with our first question for a brand new guest.
Well, Alec, thank you for being on the show. It's an honor. I don't know what Evan had to promise you, if it's an arm and a leg to get on the show, but thank you. We ask all of our guests the same questions. Where did your passion for hockey come from? Like, how did you get involved in the game? And what kind of started this passion for Fighting? And could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Davenport, Iowa, and for those that know, that's part of the Quad Cities. And if you're any familiar with minor pro hockey, the Quad Cities has been synonymous with minor pro hockey since the mid 90s. And so we went to Quad City Mallards games back when it was the old Colonial Hockey League, and then it turned into the UHL. And then eventually we moved to Florida, and then we ended up going to Tampa Bay Lightning games once we got closer to Tampa. So I was raised on hockey at a very young age. My aunt and uncle got me into it. Like I probably started watching hockey when I was about 2 years old. So as long as I can remember, it's always been my favorite sport. And then the fighting aspect of it, I guess I can thank my aunt and uncle for that too, because I always remember when I was little, you know, because there's 2 times in a hockey game where people stand up. It's a goal in a fight, right? And so when everybody would stand up during a fight, I was too little. So my uncle would like Lion King me up above the crowd, trying to, you know, get me to see the fight, like, you know, watch it going on, because they had like Kerry Toporowski and guys like that out there. And then as I got older, it was The Last Gladiators documentary, which was kind of a precursor to Ice Guardians that some people might have seen out there, which is a hockey fight documentary. And it followed Chris Knuckles Nyland. And that's really what kind of kickstarted it. Was I got into that, and then I was like, because I'd always watch fights. Actually, my very first video I ever searched on YouTube was a hockey fight. I don't know why. I was like 8 years old, but it was. But yeah, so that kind of sparked and then snowballed. And then next thing you know, I just started focusing on enforcers and doing deep dives in careers, falling down the YouTube rabbit hole of, you know, Derek Bugard fights, Bob Probert fights, whatever. And, you know, it was just a big snowball effect. But yeah, I love it, man.
Oh, that's, you know, that's absolutely great. So one of the most interesting things, one of our biggest hit shows, one of our guests that's on, actually Zill, she was on very first time she came on the show. We had her and one of our other guys, Jordan, and we talked around fighting in hockey. And it was interesting. The previous week, 10,000 views. You know, that week we hit the all-time high where we hit like almost 30,000 views.
38.
Talking, was it 38,000?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and we were like 20,000 by the end of the night. And it was just like, are you serious? You know,
so
this
was after the incident between Tom Wilson on the Washington Capitals and Artemi Panarin. Yep. And that awkward kind of battle and whether or not there should be enforcement in fights, just to preface. But yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, Alec, let's get into, so we talked a little bit and mentioned a while back because I was following you actually, and on your Twitter account. And so this was just off your Twitter account on your 5 for Fighting podcast. If you guys want to follow him, you can just add him over at 5 for Fighting Pod. So tell us a little bit about what you were doing with this podcast. And then let's walk into the story of what happened that you're being asked to take it down.
Yes. So, well, I mean, like it says there in the description, the podcast was a podcast dedicated to the players who dropped the gloves and the fans who enjoyed watching them do it. And, you know, I got to mention, of course, my good friend Darren up in Saskatchewan. He also runs a podcast called The Fourth Line Voice, and he was kind of really helped me along the way. And he was kind of the first original Enforcer podcast, but it was kind of just, you know, there was the only one going out there. And I said, well, yeah, you know, and him and I are good friends, so it's not like we're stepping on each other's toes or anything like that. And so I was like, would you mind if I start one? He said, no, absolutely. Like, you know, the more the merrier. Because these guys' stories out there, it's the hardest job in sports, and it's the most thankless job in sports, if you ask me. Because you ever see anybody on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, even today, oh, Ryan Reeves sucks, Tom Wilson sucks, they're dummies, they're goons, the idiot. Like, okay, well, there's no such thing as a goon in hockey in 2023. I'm sorry. You have to be good to play in the NHL. So they just weren't getting the proper recognition, I think. And so that's when I was like, okay, well, we'll start this up and see where it goes. And it just I started interviewing guys from different leagues, whether it was the LNH, which is the crazy fight league up in Quebec, NHL.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, that's right too.
Like the NHL, I had Rob Ray on, I had Chris Nyland on, Chris McAllister, and then just guys from all different leagues. And you get to hear these stories, and especially guys in the minors, I've always gravitated to, being from the Quad Cities, and that was the hockey I watched. Those stories, like you get to hear about like buses breaking down or coaches getting in fights, and this stuff isn't on YouTube. You don't get to hear any of this, and it's so fun to go through and actually appreciate these guys' careers, and you get to hear about what they go through, just injury wise, and the mental aspect of the role of fighting in hockey and what it used to be like. It's a little bit different in today's standards, but it's like I said, it's one of the most difficult jobs in sports, and probably the most thankless job in sports.
Yeah. Okay. There's definitely a big, not only physical aspect in terms of, you know, size and grit and being able to throw some of that weight, you know, whether it's a punch, you know, or your body and your positioning, but it's also that mental game where you got to physically prepare, because this isn't just like a boxing match where, you know, you're wearing shorts and you're going after with gloves, right? You're dropping the gloves, and guys got helmets on, guys got things like that. So take us through some of the styles that you've seen of fighting over the years and how it's kind of transitioned from what you experienced back in the day to what is now. And even when you've done your research earlier on in the early beginnings of the NHL, if you've gone that far back.
Yeah, so you get to see the role develop, and of course, John Ferguson was kind of the original hockey enforcer. Is regarded by many historians as that, and he was the first one with the Montreal Canadiens. And then you got into the Broad Street Bullies, of course, and that's where it became an arms race. It was like a Cold War in the NHL. Everybody's just trying to get stacked on tough guys because this is how it's done. And then you go to the 90s, everything becomes kind of specialized. It goes from having those 3 enforcers to kind of 1 enforcer. And then it was still kind of prevalent up until about 2014. And I think Brian McGrattan was probably the last true tough guy. You got Ryan Reeves still, which I think is pretty tough. Him and Ross Johnson had a good one the other night. But you get to see the 90s, I think, is really when it became almost scary and specialized. These guys became huge. You were getting like, you know, Bob Probert was considered big when he fought, and that was in the 80s and early 90s. And he fought up until the 2000s. But when he was first in the league, you know, 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", it's okay. You know, they're pretty big. Well, fast forward, you're getting Steve McIntyre, Derek Bugard. These guys are 6'6", 6'7", you know, 250. And it almost became the fighting role became so specialized to where it was almost like fighters on skates as opposed to just playing hockey. But that's just the way the role went because of certain rules coming in and everything like that. But you get to see different things from guys cross grabbing for better grips and fights. You'd see guys throwing the jersey jabs that if you look in like a lot of the 80s and 70s fights, that wasn't a thing. Jersey jabs kind of developed through time. So it's a magnitude of different things of just evolution of fighting. It's actually very interesting to go down. Like if anybody wants to do it, I highly recommend go down there.
All right. So Brian knows you. He said he really enjoyed, you did an interview with Howie.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a former Quad City Mallard. That was a fun one. That was like I think it was like a Tuesday night or Thursday night. And I felt bad because I was like, we were going for like 2.5 hours, but I could have talked to Howie for about 6. And it was fun. And I was like, man, I got to go to work in the morning, so I got to cut it short. But yeah, that was a good one.
So Zill, who had the conversation in our fighting, I wanted to jump in here really quick. And she's talking about bare knuckles is illegal worldwide. So it should be banned in hockey. Good take or bad take?
Bad take. And I don't mean to, you know, step on any toes here, but here's my thing. Yep. I could say fighting is good in hockey. Somebody else could say fighting is bad in hockey. At the end of the day, my opinion and that opinion doesn't matter. What matters is the players' opinions. And if you ask every single player, I would say about 99% of them would say fighting is good in hockey, and they vote to keep. I know in today's climate they don't post the poll results anymore. But if you go back to like 2014, 2015, that era. The NHLPA took a poll every year to keep fighting. It would vote, do you want to keep fighting in hockey? Overwhelmingly, this is the Players Association of the NHL, 99, 97% of the NHL wants to keep fighting in hockey. So at the end of the day, my opinion and somebody else's doesn't matter. What matters is do the players want it? And if the players continue until the players say, we don't want fighting in hockey anymore, I say keep it in.
All right. So before that, she was asking the question here. So we want to get to this. She was asking who's asking for it to be taken down and why with your site there. So
I initially became a season ticket holder of the Florida Everblades last year. And I started uploading fights from the ECHL. You know, you go to the game footage, you clip the fights, and I started uploading it because none of this stuff was out there. I noticed there was none of this footage, and I'll elaborate more of how much it actually means to players down the line. But so I ended up actually having almost 400 videos, 400 fight clips from that season.
Wow.
And everything was fine. And then out of nowhere, it was one incident this year where a player happened to like kind of going through the tunnel, kind of slapped his stick on the tunnel at a fan tried to grab him. And that video got taken down by the ECHL as copyright. I said, okay. So I messaged the ECHL. I said, hey, please let me know your parameters. I can make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, our policy is you're not allowed to have any footage of ECHL broadcast games at all. And I said, okay, left it at that. An hour later, I get another message and that says, so we hereby ask that you bring down every single fight video on your YouTube channel, or we will be forced to claim copyright on it. And so about 2 days later, got copywritten, everything got taken down. And so at that point they said that because I had interviews with players too. That was my big thing as well. This is
Right.
Nobody's talking about the ECHL. If we're being honest, and I'm not trying that to slight the league. I love the league. It's my favorite league still, but you look at it, hockey is probably one of the lowest sports watched in the United States. You got baseball, football, basketball, MMA. Those are probably the big four. Hockey's below that. On top of that, you have a AA hockey league. So you're already the lowest watched sports in the US, and you're also the third highest league. So nobody's watching it. And so it ended up getting taken down. And even though other people have posted fight videos since then, they're allowed to stay up. I've messaged the ECHL. I actually, it's going to sound crazy. I sound like a lunatic. I tried to call the commissioner of the league. I tried to call the commissioner and the guy who coordinates like the broadcast for it. And this is because this is how much this footage means to me. And I don't mean that to sound crazy, but I have players' parents reach out to me who were like, hey, where's my son's footage? This is how I was able to watch some of his stuff. And I have players reach out, hey, this was the only footage I had of my fight. And it might be the one fight a player has in their career. And it's up there. So now it's gone. And I can't upload again. And every time I upload, the ECHL is like right there to just right on my back to just take everything down. But that's my thing, is these other channels still posting. And I hope those other channels continue to post, because this is hockey history we're missing out on. But why is mine being targeted is the question.
Well, and that was the piece. So when we originally brought that up, that was what we were like. I was like, okay, how was that happen? Obviously, they just may get light of it. I know we just had a discussion pre-show that I haven't even brought this up with Pawel, that we're going to see with our new website going up if there's a way that maybe we can preserve something here. So we'll talk more off air. Now, interesting. Let's come back to that in a minute. Right now in our comments section, we got stuff going on here. So from Zylstra, now interesting, Jordan and Zylstra are both on from that show. So Jordan's in here. It is not banned worldwide. And then Jordan says it's called Well, BFK. I think okay. And basically he's talking UF-siders. There's tons of different stuff. That's the bare knuckle, right? Different stuff. So, and then Zill also was saying we're having our own wars going on. We try to teach our kids that physical reaction to harassment is wrong, but yet we are saying fighting in hockey is okay. And then Jordan still goes on. It's a huge part of hockey. I can't see leaving anytime soon.
Clearly, I'm missing both of them on the show tonight. But
anyway, and then Zylstra made sure to put on. She had asked you that question. That sucks, Alex. Sorry to hear ECHL is being stupid about the whole thing. And then we got another one in here from Clara. It's a part of the game. That literally what Enforcer's role was. And one more. I just got to. We don't normally get them going back and forth, so I got to highlight this. You also have young players coming into the league who fight a lot, like that Arbor kid in Montreal. Yeah. So, but interesting, guys. So if you're going in the text, I'm not going to bring any more of your comments up. We can't keep going on back and forth. Otherwise, the show is all about you, and we're the ones with the platform. Come on.
No, we like the engagement. It's fun.
So read in the comments with each other. You guys keep going back and forth. Just remember, Two Guys in Hockey Talk, we always say, argue away, have fun debating, but just be respectful to one another is all we ask.
I think the question now, Alec, is how do you move from here? Because you still want to tell these stories, which is a part of some people's history, a part of people's lives, as well as a part of hockey of a subsect of hockey that needs more representation in the media, right? The ECHL, it needs more recognition, right? You don't have enough of it. The NHL, easily you could sell that to anybody. But when you're trying to get to the smaller leagues where these players are coming up, how do you promote that? And how do you go from there?
But you're 100% honest. I have no clue. I don't, because like I said, even after trying to message the main guy who was the the point of contact when I was getting the copyright notices, I tried to contact him. I got one very standard email written response that was the exact same thing they said in the Twitter messages. So it's okay, it is what it is. But going forward, I don't know how the ECHL expects fans to get into the league that way. I mean, you got arenas and they're max, 5,000-7,000 capacity stadiums. They're not, you're not drawing in 20,000 people like an NHL game, let alone on a Wednesday night. Who's going to an ECHL game besides for maybe a couple diehards, or like in the Everblades case, there was
or
like a college nearby. Exactly. So it's like, how do you grow the game when it's already such a niche product in not only North America, but just in hockey as a whole, since it's a lower level minor pro league? How do you expect to grow it if fans can't help promote it? Because I was helping try to promote the players, their fights, and I had players reach out, and it's like, I don't know why the league. I'm not going to say the players' names, but basically said the league is just stupid. I don't know why they're doing this to you. Like, this is our footage that's getting taken down. You're trying to help our league, and I interviewed other players about it. And so where you go from here is the ECHL. I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
What I find interesting is it's not like they're promoting their game, right? Like you were kind of mentioning that there's no promotion. So it makes sense when you're in an NHL because you have all this sponsorship, you have all this money, and you're investing. You don't want anyone stealing your thunder, right? You want your clips, but when you got a league that basically is just supported locally and then gets a certain amount of money in their contracts with the connection to the AHL affiliates, but it's limited cash flow. Owners are, and that's one thing I had looked into. I know a couple that are connected to some owners, and essentially most of them lose money. They don't make a lot of money on it unless they get good attendance and and in arenas where they can sell a lot of extra stuff on the side.
Exactly. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say there was a similar example. It's separate from hockey, but there was an incident where the one of the scenes in a Star Wars episode, a local fan bettered the what's it called, the CGI in an episode, bettered the character in that episode, and rather than sue him or attack him or do something with that, they hired him. So you'd think that the ECHL would approach you and be like, how do we collaborate? How do we work together so that you continue to promote our product and get our name out there through these players? But sorry.
And I tried to explain that to them too in my emails, and I was very kosher. I wasn't like mother effing them or anything like that in the emails or whatever. I said basically, hey, I have a platform. I've already interviewed your players. YouTube at the time, I was almost at 1,000 subscribers. I have 12,000 followers on Instagram, 3,000 on Twitter. I also run a Facebook group that's got almost 13,000 followers. That's all dedicated to fights. I can help promote the league, and hopefully this draws people in, but I guess they wanted none of it, and they never got back to me, never heard back from them, and all they ever did was just ban more of my content afterwards. So I don't know.
So what are you doing with your current library of content then?
So right now I keep everything up. Everything's still on Spotify and like iTunes, Podbean, or all those sites or whatever.
Right.
All the podcast is still up. Thankfully that's all up. Now in terms of video, they said I was allowed to keep my player interviews up, which they took down anyway because it was part of the old channel. So, that was cool. Thanks, guys. And then I had, all the fights taken down, but they said you're allowed to post fights as long as they're taken by fans. It's just that you can't post broadcast footage. And again, it's like, I try to be gung ho about doing that. And I have certain people that always send me footage. But trying to going in there begging for change in some Toledo Walleye Facebook group, it's like, hey, does anybody have fight footage? And it becomes redundant over time.
Were you talking about the walleyes, man? Do you know? So Zill actually grabbed me one when she was down that way trucking through. So she took in a walleye game. So I actually have one of those jerseys for my wall behind me.
I love the Toledo Walleye.
what a great jersey too. They got
my
some
favorite
good
is
stuff.
they have a fan there, and it depends on what the situation is, but they've had where they'll throw a walleye on the ice like mid-fight or after a fight. It's hilarious. It's awesome.
Almost like the old octopus, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Put a little flair on it.
So what's your plans moving forward right now? So you've been running this podcast or telling. So are you let our followers know kind of what to expect if they're interested. Is there anything, other places to go? What's their options?
So as of right now, you can still go on YouTube and find you just search Five for Fighting podcast on YouTube, and you can find some of the fan submitted videos. It got to a point where I got so, and it shouldn't have gotten me so like disheveled about it. But I got so irritated, I stopped doing the podcast altogether. Because it's, if I'm not getting, and I don't mean this like, hey, somebody needs to come, like Barstool, come pay me. But when it's a hobby and a hobby stops being fun, like we mentioned before, it's time to hang it up. And it kind of stopped being fun after that. That was a huge blow to the podcast. On top of that, I work in construction. So some of the job sites I have are 2 hours, an hour and a half away. Well, I drive for 4 hours a day. I come home. I can't just, say hi to the wife and dogs and just say, yeah, I'm going to go podcast now. Got to talk to them a little bit here and there. So it just became a lot. So in terms of the podcast going forward, it might come back in like a year or so when everything maybe settles down. But as of right now, I don't have any plans to bring it back. Now, if the ECHL somehow came by and was like, hey, we're allowed to post stuff, then okay, maybe we could talk about it then. But until then, I just leave everything up because I think it would be a disservice to the players I've interviewed and the fans I've interviewed to take their stuff down. So I keep everything. Everything will still be up. It's just more so dormant for right now.
That's fair. That's fair. Wow. Well, I mean, now we know that we can replace Evan with you, and you can come on the show and be the other guy.
Yeah, anytime.
two guys and the other guy.
So I guess I wanted to ask a quick question, and maybe you can just share. Where did the name Five for Fighting come from? Because the only thing that I could think of is the band that wrote that song in the 90s. But go ahead.
It's funny. I had no clue that was even a band. And I literally just got it from, you get the call and two guys go to the box. Okay, well, so, both guys 5 minutes each for fighting. So it's like for Five for Fighting, it follows the fighting theme of the podcast. So I was like, oh, that'll stick. But yeah, it was funny. I had people mention me like the band. I'm like, what are you talking? I was like, who is the band? I've never heard of this band you're talking about, man. But yeah, after looking, of course you see the band now. But yeah, no, that was a complete afterthought.
And I'm hoping they didn't come after you the way the ECHL did, right? I'm sure they're pretty.
No, they did. The guy actually like somehow got a hold of one of my videos and was like, oh, this is cool. There's a Five for Fighting podcast. So I was like, thanks for not copywriting me. ECHL, take notes.
All right, so we're going to take one comment. I have one last question. What we'll do is, so Alec, we're going to get you back to talking around enforcers and stuff around a whole bunch of stuff at another time, if that's good with you.
Absolutely.
We want to cover a lot of stuff that's been happening at trade deadline here today, but okay, so let's just throw this up. So Brian wrote with parliament members like Enrico Ciccone trying to stomp out fighting at the entry level in juniors, lower leagues like the ECHL likely would love the promotion, but can't risk publicly being seen as condoning promo of their fights from a possible liability standpoint, especially with CTE, former player lawsuits, etc. Interesting. Okay, so what is another way that we can get it out there then, right? That would be the question.
Well, and Brian, that's a great point. And I will say this, though, because that's been brought up to me as well. They're like, well, maybe do you think they don't want to promote fighting and this and that? Go on the team's Facebook pages or YouTube or Twitters and Instagrams. The teams will post the fights. They're posting fights. So it's not like this is something that they want to just tuck away and, oh, no, we don't want this. It's the ECHL. The best thing that can happen for them is something gets picked up by Spit and Chicklets. Or like I posted a double TKO fight earlier in the year, got picked up by Sports Center. It has over 7 million views now, but it doesn't have. But here's the worst. The worst part is this was after the league came in and took everything down. So now at this point, you don't have their streaming service up there anymore. You don't have the team logos. You don't have the league logo. And so people are asking, what league is this? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like you could have had 7 million eyes on your minor pro league, but because you wanted to copyright a channel, you can't anymore. So I don't think it really comes down to them not wanting to promote fighting because the teams themselves still post fighting.
Fair. So my question is to end on a better higher note is there a fight or two that you would recommend people checking out, whether through your channel or wherever they can find it, that you think is like that's one of the wildest, craziest, most insane, most physically aggressive fights that you've ever seen, like one or two that really like pop or stand out?
I'll give you 3 right off the rip here. So we got Bob Probert versus Marty McSorley. That's regarded as one of the greatest hockey fights of all time. It's a marathon. It almost lasts 2 minutes. Look up Ken Tasker versus Trevor Sen. That was the first hockey fight video I ever watched on YouTube, and it's toe-to-toe battles. I actually interviewed I interviewed Ken Tasker about that fight, and that was a great one. And then the third one I'll say is look up John Morasti versus Steve Bosse in the LNAH, and that one was, I think it's round 4. and you'll be able to find that one. And same thing in Steve Bosse. It looks like a horror scene by the time he's done with it, from his nose being broken and the blood all over his jersey. Yeah, go look at those.
That is correct. By the sounds of it, Alec, we need to just sponsor you so you can then bring us some really good ECHL and some AHL and some players that are enforcers.
Yeah, no kidding.
It was funny, when we were talking with Kyle Rossiter, who was drafted originally by Florida there. He didn't get a lot of games in, end up with injuries, but he was saying that everyone was looking at him as this tough guy coming in the fighting part, but he thought it would be he'd be able to get in there and actually make a career out of scoring even. But it's interesting how you get typecast, depending on your size, and careers change. They literally change, even though they wasn't expected.
Yeah, some guys will do it because they realize it's their only shot, and then other guys just love to fight. It's funny how it goes.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, hey man, it's been a blast having you on. Thanks so much. We're gonna get you back on, and we're gonna talk more around this subject. Maybe we'll bring an octagon panel on and have a go at her.
There we go. I appreciate you guys for taking the time to let me come on the show here and talk some fighting. I always love it.
And
man,
just before we
awesome.
let you go, where do you want people to kind of check you out again, on Twitter or anywhere? Where do you want them to follow
so
you?
just search 5 for Fighting Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and it should pop right up. Make sure you put the podcast at the second part of it. If you just search 5 for Fighting, you'll get the band. I found that out early. after everything, yeah.
That's so awesome, man. Okay, well, hey, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We will touch base maybe even before the end of the season. Maybe let's consider around the playoff time.
Yeah,
that'd be a good when the NHL's hitting it, and that's when we know that the tough guys really start showing themselves.
For sure, absolutely. I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. Cheers.
Yep.
Take care.
Bye.
Hey, that was awesome, man. Gotta appreciate that.
That's fantastic. He's a very smart, knowledgeable, really charismatic guy, and I really appreciate what he's been doing. And boo on the ECHL. Boo for taking that down.
Boo.
That's not cool, right? That's uncool, as the kids say, or whatever the kids say these days. Evan.
Hey, so before we, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna you're gonna let me take over today, man. So we talked about this. So one of our former guests, Howie Draper, coach, Edmonton Sports Hall of Fame coach. He should be in the Sports Hall of Fame, not just Edmonton, man, not just Canada, but with over 18 championships. The list goes on. Go back to one of our old takes with Howie Draper. He gave to our team here, you and some of the guys. I didn't get out to that one. You got out to, so I'm just going to show a clip that you took. You can talk us through it here and explain a bit. So it's just a quick little clip, guys, of Pawel, and we'll call him the Two Guys Posse, out at one of the local University of Alberta Pandas women's team.
What's up, everyone? It's Pawel from You Guys Hockey Pandas. I'm about to give up my money. I think I know you guys. Sean, James, and Jordan here. We're watching the game. The ladies are taking on the Manitoba Bison. It's been wonderful. I'm not seeing a lot of the Bison team, but it's been fun. Manitoba's not doing good. It's good. It's 2-0 for the U of A Pandas. It's been fun. We hope to see you soon. Thank you, Howie Draper, for the tickets.
No, I didn't really. That was loud.
I'm sorry. I was trying to keep my volume down. It was a wild barn. It wasn't too busy, but it was fun. So that was a few of the buddies. We got some tickets to go to the game at the Clark Drake Arena here in Edmonton by the Butterdome, if people know where the university is. And the ladies played. They won 4-1 versus the Manitoba Bison. And it was a fantastic game. The girls really outplayed them. It was a great atmosphere. We had one too many beers. We're building a little tower. And by the end of the game, the ladies were able to body check it after their big win to knock over all the cups. So that was fantastic. We had a couple
the interaction.
of the youngins, the university folk come over, drop some extra cups off. The girls have been doing very well. Unfortunately, they just lost in the semifinals there, but they've been rocking. And it's just what we want to promote here is not only women's hockey, but also just local sports in your area, wherever you are in the world, wherever you're checking us out, go check out that local sports hockey because it's fun. It's affordable. It's family friendly, it's easygoing, and you're getting the same exciting product that you would anywhere else, right? And I know it's not the NHL, but it's still fun when you bring family and friends. And we saw a lot of young fans in the stands. I caught a puck and gave the puck to a young fan who was all dressed up in the gear. And props to Howie Draper for leading an elite team squad this year. We hope to have Howie back on the show, but no, it was great. And I hope to be back again in the summer or fall when the season starts up again.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We're going to have to take in also Golden Bears here. Okay, so again, great interview. Zil just mentioned it was a great interview. Of course, Jordan being Jordan, get a real goon on the show. Well, Jordan, I guess you just weren't available.
I was going to say, yeah, where is he?
Oh yeah, so we'll get him back on, guys. We're gonna have more conversations. Definitely, we'll get Alec on. I mean, he's a fabulous. Did you hear his voice? It sounds like he's got that deep voice. It's like I would love to have that deep voice. Well, speaking of deep voices, there's a lot of voices that have been talking. So if you look behind Pawel, you see the cat. Look behind him, Toronto. Now, we told you we were going to talk a little bit about what's been happening in NHL now. In the NHL, the trade deadline's coming. Behind me, Arizona made their deal today. Also, by the way, you'll see that's their AHL team. So these, courtesy of Zil. Again, thanks, Zil. I want to give you a heads up. Props, thanks so much. That's the Tucson Roadrunners. Their character Lazo, one of their special jerseys, and retro jersey of Arizona. But we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what's been happening. Interesting, Pawel. This is the most activity and some of the biggest names that have been traded pre-deadline leading up to. It's like a whole deadline has happened. I feel sorry for the mainstream TSN and Sportsnet. They have nothing left to talk about soon.
James Gunthy or Duffy, whatever his name is.
James Duffy,
Duffy, yeah. He's gonna have to talk about other stuff during that day. But yeah, no, it's wild. It's like Christmas has come early for hockey fans, and you thought, oh, like here's the Tarasenko trade, or here's the Bo Horvath trade. It's like driplets of trades, and all of a sudden it explodes, and it looks like GMs are on the phone going crazy. And here's the wild thing: everyone said, oh, it's gonna be quiet. Everyone's against the cap. It's not gonna work, and yet here we are. We're like 12 trades in, and it's still not the deadline. We still have 2 more days left, so anything can happen. And it seems like there's a lot of movement. So what are your first initial thoughts on some of the big trades? Let's start with Patrick Kane.
Well, first of all, before I say that, hey, Key. Hey, Freddie, man. What's up, guys? Thanks for joining in there, checking in. Really appreciate you guys. Big heads up. Just so you guys know, they're from over at the Sports Empire Network. Partner with us. We run hockey over there. So if you're not just following with us here on YouTube and Facebook, you're also could be over on the Sports Empire Network that's got not just hockey now, but they got everything else you can think of. So, guys, I don't know to all you guys, Ty, Key, Freddie, man, do you guys got XFL? That's one of the questions. I'm liking the XFL. It's a whole different conversation. We don't got time tonight, but I'm going to come on, sneak on one of your shows and I want to talk XFL, man. I almost want to run a podcast.
Talking about basketball because my Lakers aren't doing so hot, so it's been a while.
Key says time for Fletcher to go. So that's her thing. She's talking a little hockey. Chuck Fletcher, the Philadelphia. She's from Philly, man. Woo! Okay, let's go. Patrick Kane. Yeah. So interesting. So just so people understand, there's a lot of talk that he had no interest anywhere. That is not true. He had interest, wasn't sure if he was going to go, but knew that it was inevitable it would happen. But there was conversation with his family before. There was interest. The only other 2 teams that there was any interest was Edmonton because of their high-scoring offense and playing with 2 of the best in the world, and Duncan Keith, the connection. The other one that had high interest for him was Vegas. And so that, to me, that would have been where he would have ended up very potentially. They were preparing for that possibility if New York could not have got him in. But New York was his spot from the beginning. So I'm going to tell you guys that by the end of the year, are they going to sign Tarasenko and Kane? Not unless they can get him under the proper cap numbers. And I'm telling you right now, Kane will sign a lower deal. He'll be like Evander. He'll come in lower to play with that team. That's where he wants to finish his career. Tarasenko, we'll see how it goes. All right, man.
This is good for the game, and this is good because you have a superstar, a guy who has 3 cups, first ballot Hall of Famer, elite winger, one of the best American players of all time, if not the best. You guys can debate me. And he wanted to play on the big stage in New York, one of the original 16. Now I know he was in Chicago, but
and he's from Buffalo, man. He's from Buffalo.
Yeah, he's
right?
from Buffalo.
Let's be fair.
But I think this is exciting. He has that history, Panarin, and I gotta be honest, this does move the needles for the New York Rangers, and they are now contenders for the Stanley Cup. Now I know Boston has something to say, Carolina, Toronto's pushing there as well, but Rangers, man, they're gonna be exciting. They've got a lot of good pieces. They've got a lot of young guys coming up. They've got an elite goaltender. They've got some good pieces on the back end. This is their year, and I'm liking the dogfight. So
wow.
All right.
So talking about a dogfight, so let's look at that jersey behind you. So by the way, don't want to know scores. I'm recording game tonight. So please do me the favor. I don't want to have to see it, or I will have to boot you off my show anytime you come on if the Oilers are playing.
Does that include me?
Well, technically I have the ability with the Switch. So guys, let's look at this with Toronto. First of all, Ryan O'Reilly. Everyone was like, yeah, wow, and Ochari. Okay. No one thought they would go after Lafferty and McCabe as well. And then let's add to that. So who are the other guys that those are the 4 main ones that I
So they traded Engvall out and they got Luke Shen as well from Vancouver.
Yeah, Shen. So what, like they literally turned over 8 to 9 players.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Okay, they're going to win games and stuff. They had a good chemistry going. Yeah. This will be interesting, not on the players' quality and their skill or toughness, but are they able to continue what they produced this far this season, having that much chemistry change? That's the bigger question to me.
It's definitely food for thought because you want to make sure that you're clicking and gelling. And even though there's about 20 to 25 games left in the season, you want to be able to gel and play. And now I know that Kyle Dubas, he's in the final year of his contract. He's probably trying to save his job. He's going all in. He's seeing what Boston's doing. He's seeing what Rangers are doing. But I really think that he wants to make an impact and for the team to actually go all the way. Now, whether Toronto and fans and the media there are going to agree on a second round, like if they get past the first round, is that success, or do they need to at least go to the Stanley Cup final or the third round, right, to the Eastern Conference final? That will be debated. We'll see.
So,
but
interesting.
They believe, and they need to get grittier on the back end, which is what I think they did. Now, I mean, they also got rid of Sandin to Washington, so that was interesting, and picked up, I think it was Gustafsson, who came in from the other deal for a cheaper contract, $800K.
So,
but again, go ahead.
Okay, so here's the thing: Pierre LeBrun as well as Mike Johnson had a conversation. It was on, I forget the name of the podcast. It's put on by Ryan Rashog. I took a listen to this morning. They had the same discussion, and in that discussion, one of the things that they talked about is that, for example, LeBrun has talked to many people in the offseason, even when they were making these changes and even recently. And most of the league, who are you going to get better than Kyle Dubas to come in and replace him? Number one is what they're talking about. Yeah. Yes, it's the end of a contract year. They want to push it ahead. I mean, whether or not you like or dislike him and say he's bad with his cap, I'm sorry. He gets the numbers. He makes the trades. He does trades that nobody think is possible. He is really good at fandangling around out there. And most people say they'd be crazy. Now, these are high-level executives talking to LeBron, saying that they'd be crazy to let go of him. So if they don't, because it's really on the players. This is on the players. And they are in a really tough Eastern Conference where you either got Tampa, who's been there for like 3 years straight. 4 years they're going for this year.
3 years, 2 back-to-back, and then last year in the final.
So they got 3 finals, 2 back-to-back cups, and they're facing Toronto each time. They're facing them again. If they get past them even the second round, they got Boston most likely that they're going to have to take out. I mean, like literally, I'm going to tell you, if they make it to the cup, it's their cup because they're going to have to go through the beasts of the East I mean, that's going to be a tough one. So I actually think that Dubas' job is safe, man.
Oh, I think so too. Well, no, sorry, I'm going to disagree. I think
Sure.
they're going to need a change. You look at what Boston did last year, and they got rid of Bruce Cassidy, which people shook their heads. And Bruce Cassidy was only unemployed for 8 days, and now he's in Vegas. And they went out and got Jim Montgomery quickly. And Boston didn't have a bad season last year. They got eliminated by Carolina because Carolina had what's it called? Teams just kept winning in the playoffs, whoever was at home, right? So Carolina had a home ice advantage. They ended up winning the 4 games, right? And Kochetkov was a kind of a big part of that. But at the end of the day, when you look at that, Boston's all in, Carolina's all in, Jersey's trying to go all in. But Toronto, they have nothing to lose, and you're right, it's on the players. However, I don't know if the fan base will agree to having more. Now, Kyle Dubas is a very smart GM. He was scouted by Colorado, and they weren't allowed to speak to him before they went with Joe Sakic. I think that was a good choice now in hindsight. But he gets really good players, and they find a lot of gems. And they didn't have to give up too much off their roster, and their big prospect that they're really coveting is Matthew Nyes. And I think that was a big thing. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. And again, last year they took Tampa to Game 7. Right? So it's not like they can't win a round or two. It's just, it's a mental game. It's a mental game, and they got to be able to fight that. And now they have the personnel and the tools to do so. So they have the depth up front, behind, and the bottom 6, which was kind of a weakness for them. Let's see where it goes. Now,
I'm going to tell you that Toronto has 2 small moves left by the end of the deadline Friday. That's what I'm telling you.
Goaltending, is that what it is? Because
Well,
I think goaltending is their biggest weakness.
Yeah. Well, the thing is they believe they're getting Matt Murray back for the playoffs. So, if they brought it, wouldn't be a bit. So I do not think. I know there's talk around that. So, okay, can we move over to Detroit?
Sure.
Let's talk about Detroit. So it's interesting how now. By the way, I called it last week. We talked about Chychrun to the Ottawa Senators. Now, the reason I pulled back a bit on that was because the news was coming out with the sale that they didn't want to be spending money. But Pierre Dorian was allowed to spend some money if he felt comfortable with it. Well, in the end, they didn't get what they wanted in Arizona. They let him go. Everyone's really confused right now on the price. Yeah. The Senators just began building for next year. This is a great move by them. Yes. But now we'll come to the Senators second. Now, back to Detroit. So interesting enough, on Detroit, we also talked about Dylan Larkin staying. Yeah. I know I mentioned it. It was funny. So it was about 3 hours before the announcement. I had some people over in the Detroit organization that I connected with, and they were saying that he's staying. And I listened to 2 recent interviews in the last 3 days, and I'm like, there's no way he's going anywhere. He will stay. I know they were fighting for $9 million around. I figured it would come in a little bit if they're going to do it with Yzerman. And it was interesting.
And no signing bonus.
No signing bonus either. Exactly. Yzerman's good on this stuff. He knows how to work with it. And it was interesting because then it's announced, and I'm like, I thought I called it. And then I see all these insiders at the same hour I sent it out. They were already saying it. And I'm just like, oh, great. Now they're all going to be like, yeah. Where'd you hear this from? So I think I need to go back to my buddies and tell them, like, hey, guys, give it to me earlier. Come on. I want to be an insider like Pawel the Cat. But, hey, what do you think of the move? Was it Horchuk? Am I pronouncing it right?
Hronek.
Yeah, to Vancouver. What's up with that for Vancouver?
Kind of a weird move for Vancouver. I don't know why you're doing if you're trying to gain assets and picks, which I know they're trying to do. But why would you, like, I know he's a good defenseman, but, like, what? Why? And you gave up a first too. Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, you're already close to the cap. Here's the thing with GMs. Why do you push yourselves to the caps?
Yeah, well, no, I'm just like Zilcher's talking about. Yeah, they got the Islanders' first pick. Like, I was just thinking, how did Detroit do that?
Islanders. I thought it was Vancouver they traded with.
No, with Vancouver, but Vancouver had the Islanders' first pick on the Bo Horvat.
Yes. Yeah,
like I mean, and it's the Islanders, so which means that you're going to get a top 16 pick, right? No matter what on that one.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me. Good again. Yzerman plan. I believe in it. He's got a
Yeah.
plan. He's been doing good. Now the one rumor is Tyler Bertuzzi. Will he? Won't he go? I mean, they're kind of still around the playoffs. I mean, those 2 losses to Ottawa, that didn't help their cause.
Yeah.
And Ottawa was hanging on by a thread to keep their playoff hopes alive. So good for Ottawa for pushing through.
Yeah.
Can I just say how amazing Tim Stützle looks? The guy has been incredible. I've loved watching him. But anyways, that's just as an aside. I'm sure Kevin Francis can come on and kind of, share and gloat how wonderful he is. But anyways, long story short, Bertuzzi could be not on the market. I know a few teams are interested. I know Holland has interest given his history with the player. So maybe there's a move there. There was that discussion about his COVID status. That's something in the background, but it should be okay. Detroit is going in the right place. They're moving forward. They're building a lot of their pieces. They're still playing meaningful games. And honestly, this is just another piece with Dylan Larkin. And again, Dylan Larkin is an elite 2-way center. He plays well. He's not going to put up the superstar points, but he's going to be a solid, like a Matt Barzal, and he knows how to play the game defensively. He's elite. And one of my favorite stories with him is when he was in early warm-up and he boxed or hit body checked one of the glass, and a beer spilled over on a fan, and the fan was upset. So he got a trainer to go and give him 20 to buy him a new beer, right? So just goes to show you how expensive beer is at Little Caesars Palace. But yeah, so let's talk about Kyle just brought it up. Orlov and Hathaway. So Boston, you didn't think they could be unstoppable. Now they pick up Orlov and Hathaway from Washington. What are your thoughts, Evan?
Oh man. Okay, first of all, I thought Orlov they'd be resigning him in Washington. That totally took me off guard. I feel that they got him, they gave a bag of pucks and they got Orlov. Essentially, Kyle, that's what I see this as. It's a crazy piece. And Kyle, we're going to bring you on closer to the playoffs. I wanted to let you know we're going to plan to have you on and Let's Talk Bruins on one of our podcasts just pre-playoff, because man, that team is a juggernaut. It's already set NHL records, which is just unheard of. And they could very well come out as the all-time greatest regular season team. Here's my concern, and we'll talk about this with Kyle on an episode, but my concern is anytime a team dominates the regular season like they do, they're not used to going through tough times. And when you run into a playoff series, if you start having a tough time, the truculence is not there the same way, and the team is not ready to play, and sometimes they get knocked out in the first or second round. That's a bit of a concern for me.
So you're saying the playoff, the President's Trophy curse is real this far?
So I'm not going to say President's Choice, because there's years when you don't dominate, but they have dominated.
That's fair.
They have just, the Bruins have taken the Dominator, quote unquote, brand from the Buffalo Sabres and Dominic Hasek and announced it as the Bruins motto for the playoffs. They are the Dominator.
I will say I was wrong at the beginning of the season when we made our predictions for the standings in the Atlantic. So I could say I'm wrong. I'll admit it. But I did not think Boston would be as elite as they were. I thought they'd be battling for a playoff spot, a wild card spot, given the age of their group and everything. But I got to tell you, David Krejci and Bergeron have turned father time around and have really played unwell. And the fact that your 2 top line centers are making no more than $5 million max, that just speaks volume of the character of that room and everything. And if it wasn't for the Mitchell Miller situation, this would almost be a perfect season for the Bruins.
Wow.
But
okay,
let's move over. Let's talk about Timo Meier, the big fish that's in New Jersey. What are your thoughts, Evan, on the big trade with San Jose?
Okay, first of all, I called it 2 weeks ago.
I think it was the worst kept secret in the NHL.
So hey, to be fair, the Canes were absolutely in on this, but what they paid was nothing. I don't understand some of these trades. They paid nothing really to get Meier. Here's the interesting piece, though. A lot of people were going on how he was a better player than Patrick Kane and Kane's washed up. And I am sorry, this is his best season. His best season now at his age, going into his unrestricted free agency, and the money that he's going to be demanding. Now they can afford him in New Jersey. I think he fits what they need, but I think people got to be careful of trying to consider him. It's almost like they're talking like he's a top 2 player on your team. He is not, and that's why they did not get what they wanted in that trade. So I like him. I think it's going to be a great push for him. But that guy, he didn't demand what everybody thought he would demand.
I agree. I like the trade for New Jersey, not only because it rewards that team, and Nico Hischier, a fellow countryman, is going to play with him, so he's excited. They've got a young core there that's up and coming, and they can always make waves. And the one thing people always forget is, like, every year in the playoffs, there's always a team that out of nowhere can be a Cinderella story, or a team that you don't expect to go far, and so people expect the Bruins and the Tampa Bays, and the Colorados to go far. But sometimes it could be a New Jersey team that beats, and it looks like they're facing off against the Rangers, and they take the Rangers down, and something happens, and here we are having a different discussions in the playoff in the second round. So
exactly,
I like this. Now, one of the reasons why this trade was made with San Jose, Mike Greer wanted more draft picks. Their shelves are not really stocked. They're missing a lot of players, and they wanted some. And the fact that also Timo Meier isn't signed for next year, it's only 1 year, but they did retain some salary. It just goes to show you that he got what he could, because they would want to restock and rebuild or retool in the next few years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but you guys can let us know what your thoughts are on that trade. So now I want to move over.
Okay, now, here's a problem. I just want to bring him up. Kyle loved them Boston, even though, and Zill goes on to say that I hate and dislike the Bruins. Kyle came up and said, valid question. That's what I was talking about. Having faith in the leadership of Bergeron and Marchand to keep the team focused. That's a very good point. Love to talk Bruins hockey. We will make it happen, Kyle. Okay, so here is the thing. We are at 7:59. Again, we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to have to do this as one last thought, and we're going to have to call it and get to next week and maybe take a lot of our talk and build it around. We'll take 3/4 of our show, and we'll commit it to – or actually, I think I got someone on next week. Yeah, actually, so we'll have about a half a show. We got Sports Plus on next week with us. So, okay, so I'm going to leave my last thought for when I go out, but give us your last thought, and then we're going to call it quits.
Well, so we felt like the East was just scooping up all the trades, but the West finally woke up and said, you know what, hold my beer or hold my drink. So I like what the Edmonton did with Ekholm. That's going to be a good pairing. Yep. I'm surprised that the Jonathan Quick trade to Columbus and the fact that Gavrikov and Korpisalo go the other way. I don't know if that makes LA a better team, especially with the dynamics that we talked with Toronto. And I'm really excited to see what happens tomorrow as well as Friday, because at least then I can actually do my work instead of actually follow the updates on Twitter. So I look forward to chatting with people then and just seeing what happens. But it's been a dynamite go of it. And thanks for Alec for coming on the show and chatting a little bit about fighting. So that's my final thoughts today.
That's so awesome, man. I just want to make a quick point, folks. Unless it's happened while I was on here, expect, if they can make it happen on the bookwork, that Vegas will pick up Jonathan Quick from the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's pretty much, it's looking like they are the ones that are pushing hard. It's just making the money work on that sense. Never, man, when it comes to McCrimmon, Kelly McCrimmon can make sweet deals and find ways to make things happen. So good on them. They're going to be interesting in the playoffs. So, and I was going to say, Korpisalo, I actually like him replacing Quick. That might give them a little bit more. And if they have to face Edmonton in the playoffs, he's already beat them twice with the Columbus Blue Jackets this year and Connor McDavid. So, hey, hats off to him, man. It's been a great show.
The most saves in a playoff game, too. I think it was like 80 something.
Crazy. Well, man, it's been a slice and a half. Wish we could keep talking, guys. We've already gone into overtime today. So thanks to all of you for your comments, everything happening. Again, we got a whole bunch of stuff. We got new sponsors, websites coming up. We're going to be adding people to our group. So our Two Guys Posse, we're looking forward to getting some of you guys writing, adding you to some of our groups if we've talked with you. We just can't keep up. I think we might have to quit our day jobs and just become regular hockey guys all the time.
I wish.
All right. Well, guys, in the meantime and in between time,
Keep your sticks on the ice. Stay safe.
oh, by the way, keep your head up.